Okay, let's move on and talk to Patty in Greensboro, North Carolina. Patty, you're live with Eric and Zod. What would you like to talk about today?
Hey guys, I don't know if you remember, I called in a couple weeks ago.
You got to help refresh my memory, and I know Zod is guesting, so could you get us back to refresh our memories, please?
I got you. I was the Muslim guy. I called in. We had a conversation about the tri-omni God and the logical inconsistencies in that.
Okay, cool.
Well,
And
anyway, you had me.
go ahead.
You had me go ahead and Oh, it's Hadi. I don't know what you had me listed as. It's my friend's watching the show. Yeah.
It looks like there was a misspelling here. H-A, how do you spell that?
H-A-D-I.
Got it. Sorry about that. Okay, so go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, so you had me go ahead and look into the tri-omni God logical contradictions. So I did a little bit of research. There's two kind of perspectives from the Islamic faith that I want to bring to you.
Okay.
The first, which is, I would say, the more popular conception, is the maximally powerful God, i.e. a God that cannot do something that would violate his own essence, but otherwise can do whatever he wants. And the other one would be the kind of more Sufi conception that I enjoy a little bit more. And that is that problems like this, logical contradictions, exist because we are in a logical universe. God transcends the logical universe. So when viewing the problems from outside of logic, there's some solution that we can't conceive of at the moment.
Okay. So doesn't that sound like kicking the ball down the road? Or saying, I'm right, but you're just too dumb or incapable or not equipped to be able to handle it, but I'm right. Because if that's the case, then I could say something similar. You know, I could say something in my holy book and go, hey, Eric is actually, 5 beings that are placed all over the universe and they're all connected. I can say lots of weird things. And if you say, well, no, I don't agree, I could say, well, it's just because your human brain can't comprehend it. Would that be enough for you?
Well, to me, I can't really disprove that. And if you're pretty insistent about it and you're swearing up and down that it's true, then I guess why not? What's going to stop me from believing that?
Well, here's the thing. There are a lot of places where really bad people could take advantage of you, because that's a weakness there. There's a chink in your armor. And we want to point that out because you could be taken advantage of. Instead of that, instead of saying, I will believe it until I can falsify it and prove it false, switch that around and go, the time to believe something is when there's evidence for it.
All right, that's a fair assessment. So you mentioned last call that you had some problems with a maximally powerful God, and I was curious to hear what those are.
Sure, but before I do, I think Zod wanted to chime in.
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking the fundamental challenge here is that we're not talking about a God who knows more than us or knows everything. All that we are demonstrably dealing with are people who make this assertion. And so, yeah, Eric could say that, and that maybe you could take him at his word. But the trick is, as people, when we approach each other with a new idea, we need to be able to explain it to them. Otherwise, they don't have a good reason to take us seriously. So the issue is not, can I describe something that maybe has internal consistency to it, and just shore that up by saying you can't understand it. I need to give you something that you can actually work with. I think that's, I guess, already what Eric was saying. But yeah, this is a really common thing, and it's not real. There's no conversation starter there. Anybody can just assert something exists, not explain it, and just say, I don't have to explain it because it's beyond your understanding. And so that doesn't give different groups of people anything to work with or any way to communicate. And honestly, if somebody does take that at its face, something has gone wrong. And like Eric said, you're just going to get taken advantage of because they can tell you literally anything. But we can move on to the maximally thing. That's just
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been watching anti-MLM videos and pyramid scheme stuff, and watching how a lot of people were taken in by exactly that. You have some very charismatic person who's like, no, this is exactly how you're going to become a millionaire from working at home. And it brought a lot of people in, and it has destroyed a lot of people's lives. And so, again, this isn't trying to be hurtful. This is trying to arm you and give you the best tools available. So definitely,
if you set aside the expectation for somebody to explain themselves, you're just at the mercy of charisma then, basically.
Yep.
You're switching off part of your mind, and whoever is the most forceful or most convincing can say pretty much anything to you, and you are choosing to put yourself at their mercy.
Yeah. So now talking about the omnis, did you want to talk about the omnis or maximals? What was your...
Let's talk about the maximals. I think we were pretty thorough on the omnis last time.
Okay, so give me a maximal, and let's go from there.
Within the physical universe,
I can't think of anything.
Create
Go ahead.
anything. God can create anything of any size, any scale.
Sure. So let's start there. Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. Do you mean that your God could take existing things, like make a car like that? Or do you think your God can just poof things into existence?
God can add as much energy as he would like into this system. Okay.
So do you have any examples of that happening? Like, is there a way that we can go, hey, this is a thing that can happen, and then we can determine whether or not that can be applied to the God? That's like saying, have you ever seen something falling up of its own, just falling up here on Earth? Well, no.
Are you talking about like miracles?
I am talking about, yeah, sure, miracles work. If that helps.
Okay, well then,
sure.
Let's just say then that the very fact that the universe exists, we'll call that the miracle, right? The beginning of the universe.
Okay. Haven't you just defined that God into existence now? Who says that God? Who?
I'm
okay.
not following.
Sure, no problem. So when you start a business, I know this is going to get a little weird, but I'm going to try and get there as quickly as possible. When you start a business, you don't start with all the bells and whistles on. What you want to do is you want to get down to the minimum viable product, the absolute least that you can do to be successful. Now let's apply that to the God concept. What is the minimum viable God for the creation of a universe? Right? Well, we don't have the experience of, the idea of creating universes is not something that makes a lot of sense to me. But even if we grant it, just so we can move on for this, right? What is the minimum viable thing that could create a universe? Well, I don't know, but I think I would say that which can create a universe. So maybe there's just one thing, all it does is create universes, it does that, and then pops out of existence. So now you have the beginning of the universe. Have you gotten any closer to proving you're God? Have you gotten any closer to any of its other characteristics? It kind of sounds like a non-starter.
Yeah, but that's not really the argument that I was making. I was asking you about your problems with a maximally powerful God. Like, I'm not sure I'm seeing what those problems are right now.
Absolutely. So let's take that example of something that it just poofs universes into existence and then dies. I think that would probably be, I think that is one claim. And if I stack that against all of the other claims that are made on the God side, I would say that I have a whole lot less to prove with mine than yours. So how come you discounted mine and still have yours?
Well, I don't know. I mean, from the way that I'm looking at it, it seems like they all have about the same amount to prove. You know, if you
really?
Can prove
so hold on. I'm not talking about an intelligent agent. I'm not talking about something loving. I'm not talking about something interventionary. I'm not talking about something that is everywhere at once. I'm not talking about one that can continue to do things. All of those are claims on your side, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so how are you saying that it's equal there? You have a lot more to prove than I do. And it seems that you've already ruled out mine, but still have yours. So I'm wondering where your scale is. How did you filter that out?
I see what you're saying. So you're saying that because there exist unprovable beings that are more provable, then the more provable unprovables are what we should prefer. And eventually, by following that line of reasoning, prefer only what is provable.
Not prefer only what is provable. We live in a universe that we don't understand.
Of course.
But what we do is we assign levels of confidence.
Right.
And we go, okay, hey, here's the evidence that I have of X, so I'm going to have this degree of confidence in it, and then move forward like that. And yes, I would absolutely want to take a medication that has been proven to work than one that people just hope works.
Right.
And I think that should be the way you would. I would hope that would be how you would take that to the God question too.
Well, then what I would say to that is that what is and what isn't provable is dependent on the systems that we use to prove it. Like,
Sure.
for instance, if we were living, 1,500 years ago in the mountains, the systems of proof that we might have had for proving the existence of, say, Yetis would have probably very much told us that there were Yetis out there.
Sure, absolutely.
And whatever systems that we have today are just as incomplete. Maybe they're better, but they're still incomplete. So just saying that this thing can't be proven.
I absolutely agree.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, Hadi, I absolutely agree. But I think that you're conflating two different things. You're conflating rational and true. So when you're using the best evidence available and you're making an informed decision, you could say that you're making a rational decision. There's another definition there. Is there sufficient evidence to support that conclusion? Well, you depending on the tools you have available, sure. You could say that person rationally came to that conclusion and that conclusion was still wrong. Totally understandable, but that doesn't come into the realm of truth. So let's say instead of going into the past, we go into the future and we can invent a godometer and use that godometer to detect any gods. When that time comes, sure, if that time comes, then this conversation will be a whole lot easier. But until then, I think the answer to whether God exists would probably be the same answer that I would hope for people on Yetis. And that would be, I don't know.
Well, I think that you make a really good point. And the only thing that I could say to that is that I think maybe you're putting too much of a distance between what's rational and what's true, simply because, what is true is, everything. We don't have access to the truth. We probably never will have access to the truth. All we ever have is our rationality. We may get closer, but at the end of the day, there'll always be something missing,
So you're just referring to things that we aren't aware of yet or don't have evidence for yet?
Okay, if we take, let's define truth in very worldly terms, right? This is the definition of truth that I'm using. Truth is the sum total of everything that has ever happened and will ever happen in the physical universe. Let's call that truth for now.
Okay, can I give you a competing definition of truth? Because the first one seems a little unwieldy. Okay, that which comports to reality. Or that which corresponds to reality.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing about truth. There's the correspondence theory of truth, and that's what I'm coming with right now. That which corresponds to reality.
Well, then the only thing that comes back to my earlier point, right? Like, you can only get so close. You can only correspond so closely with reality. I can say that the grass is green, and you can say that's true, but in reality, there's more to it than that. Grass is not just green. Grass is reflecting light of a certain wavelength. That light reflects because of certain other fundamental properties, and so on and so forth. There's always more.
It depends on what you mean for the purpose of conversation, though. For most people's conversation, grass is green is totally adequate to the meaning they need to take from the conversation. There could be highly scientific discussions that require something further.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is the kind of conversation that requires something further, isn't it? When we're talking about truth, we got to be talking about, like, what
Whoa.
is.
Okay, so let's say you want to describe grass in further detail than to say it's green, like go into the wavelengths and stuff like that, right? You're saying that
Yeah.
there's more truth there that you can describe about grass beyond that it's green.
Yes.
How do you get that information?
I mean, you study it.
Okay. So you come up with verifiable, observable facts about the nature of what grass is, what the word green even means. You understand it to be an approximation, but you can measure and observe things about grass that basically describe that in more detail, right?
Exactly. You can always refine the approximation.
Okay. And what do you mean by refine approximation?
Well, like you have an approximation of grass by saying it's green, and then you refine it by saying it's green because of reflecting light. Then you refine it further by saying that light behaves in certain quantum ways, and you refine it further by saying, and so on and so forth. So you're refining your approximation of what grass is.
So basically, what you're saying is when we observe grass, we describe it in somewhat approximate terms, and we understand that until we actually observe things further, we recognize that our understanding of what grass is approximate until we actually observe further things, right?
Right. And what I'm also saying is that we will only ever have, we'll have very detailed approximations, but we'll never have what grass is in our head. Like we will never truly know what is the grass. We can only ever get so close.
Hold on.
Okay, but I guess it sounds like Eric has some objection to that, but I guess my issue is there might be, my head specifically is not necessarily consciously going to hold all that data at once, and I have no use for it to be honest.
Right.
But as far as we engage with grass and the idea of grass, we're going to either do so based on data that we can observe and replicate and fully analyze and that we can be confident in, or if we're dealing with approximations, we just remain hesitant about our conclusions. We don't go making up wild assertions about grass and telling each other what grass wants of us and how it wants us to live our lives and things like that. So I think when you're dealing with any concept, what this illustration shows us is that you should either be dealing with observable, verifiable facts that you can be confident in. And when you want to expand the conversation out beyond that, you need to be very tentative about your conclusions and recognize where you're either stepping out a little too far or just plainly guessing.
Yep.
I think that's a great point. Eric, did you want to say something?
So I did have something to say, but wow, I want to underscore that point first because that is way more important. Yes, what Zod said. The other thing that I was going to say is just on another level. That's where I get the sense of wonder, the feeling of wonder, the idea that there's always more that we can learn is amazing, dude. We should enjoy it.
I totally agree.
Anyway, that said, this has been a good talk.
Yeah, they're really enjoyable.
Yeah, if there's I hope to talk to you again in a future week. In the meantime, take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like him. I like him. All right.